Hey, coaches. The training is getting close to the end. It's going to be very, very important for you to continue to grow. I like to look at a tree as an illustration of growth. It's either growing or it's dying. There's no real in between for a tree. And I think as a coach, it's fairly similar. Either we are progressing with our skills as a coach, challenging ourselves, considering how we might grow and become more effective, or we're beginning to regress, to go backwards, and to pick up old habits. To avoid that, we need to stretch ourselves. And part of that process is to be able to see indicators, to recognize the signs of going backwards, to falling into the pitfall. That becomes a bit of that performance plateau where you stop your challenge, stop the growth, and cease stretching yourself to become that great coach that you're able to be. So let's take a look at some of these pitfalls. The first one is that, hey, my process, it works. I've really nailed down the 9 steps, the 12 concepts, the number with noun formula that is going to solve everyone's template problem. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it is failing to navigate well through ambiguity, through the personal journey of each individual client. And when we overfocus on a process because it's easier, because it sells more effectively, then we can fail to walk with the client where there is no map, where our process isn't going to help them as effectively as it can. We're not as flexible and adaptable. And when we find ourselves in that position, it's really a good time to step back and say, hey, I need to get back to the foundation. I'm failing to leverage the coaching skills to navigate uncertainty and focusing more on the facilitating skills around tools and resources. And that's a very easy pitfall to fall into. Great wake-up call to get back into some form of coach training or self-assessing or something. Now, the second pitfall is my coaching produces outcomes. We're getting stuff done. People's lives are being changed. And you might have more and more and more testimonials coming your way because your coaching is successful. But keep in mind, the success of your client is not always indicative of the success of your coaching. And that's sometimes hard to hear. But if your marketing is attracting highly qualified, strong individuals because you have high quality, strong marketing, and you have a great reputation from those you have served as a coach, you'll begin relying on that sizzle rather than the steak. You'll begin relying on the reputation more than the raw skills of coaching. And over time, that begins to break down because the experience you've had in the past cannot necessarily apply to those who are coming in the future. You need to have that adaptable approach that coaching provides so that you're able to serve every client individually. The outcomes of your clients are not necessarily indicative of your success as a coach. Therefore, always stretch yourself to grow those coaching skills so that when the client is stumped and the PDF worksheet isn't working, you know exactly what to do and who to be for your client in that moment. Pitfall number 3. These habits help me help others. When you are in the midst of a lot of work as a coach, it can be very easy to rely on the habits you build up. I have to fess up to this. This is probably one of my biggest pitfalls. I can fall into easy habits of efficiency, which cause me to not show up as present as I could be for my client. When I'm in a funk, when I'm not focused, I can rely on habits to help me through that, which is nice, but I should never rely on the habits as a way to avoid growing, avoid challenging myself. That's why I got into the ACTP work, because I got the MCC after having gotten the PCC, after having gotten trained. I needed a way to keep pushing myself, because if I didn't, I'd build up these habits that make my day-to-day work faster so that I could have more free time, because that's the kind of person I am. I love free time. And if I'm just focused on that and not stretching myself, it's going to be very, very easy to regress, to go back and allow the habits to take the place of the coach. And that's just not going to be very authentic and very helpful. Now, number 4. I've never been comfortable being assessed. You have probably heard this over and over in this training. I hope to make almost like disciples out of everybody around this idea that this is not an excuse. The tree might not like to produce more fruit or to continue to stretch its branches out, but when it stops doing that, it begins to die. And that's a bit of a morbid way to look at ourselves as coaches, but the moment I say I'm beyond being assessed, or I'm never going to be comfortable being assessed, therefore I'm never going to be assessed, then we are putting ourselves, our core coaching skills at risk. They will begin to diminish, decline, and die. Not ourselves, but our coaching skills will really go backwards, and it is hard to rebuild those. Coaching, you probably know this by now, is probably 10%, 20% head knowledge, 80% practice and habit. And if you fall out of those good habits, something different is going to jump in there and take over. Assess yourself. Be assessed. Check out some of the ideas and the assessments beyond training video that's coming up here. But stretch yourself in any way you can beyond your training so that you don't fall apart when it comes to your coaching skills. You always are considering, how can I be a best servant for my clients, serving them openly as their coach. Thank you for doing that kind of work. Thank you for being introspective, considering how you're going to be growing for yourself and for your clients beyond this training, because it's not about just what's happening here in these classes. The real magic of coaching comes into play every single session you have with your members, your clients. Stretch yourself and serve them well. Thank you for coaching.